McGregor has announced his return is coming. I'm going to slice up one of you all. I'm real close on that. Now, it's tough when my very first words here were tough, right? When I say Conor McGregor just announced he's coming back. I realize that we do that every week. But I am stuck on the question of does it matter who Conor's opponent is? I mean, there's only one guy in the sport who it did not matter who his opponent was. He was going to draw. He was going to do business. One guy. Conor McGregor. Is it still? Yeah. Yep. It still is. Red Panty Night is still very real. Does it matter? Those are the questions. Or those are the words to the question. Does it matter? Well, yeah, a little bit it does. A little bit it does. There's certain things that we would need to know. Dana White, who will be promoting this, has never put a fight on that I'm aware of. Never in a headlining spot that I'm aware of that didn't have a significance. So it has to matter to some degree. I think the very first place we have to start is weight class. We have to know what weight class, and whatever weight class Conor fights at, let's make that the weight class that he finishes at. Because we've only got, it's hard to imagine that we got 3 fights left with Conor. Hard to imagine that we've got more than 3 fights left. But we might get him out there 3 times. So wherever we do it, let's just stay there. If we come back at 170, let's just stay at 170. Just a suggestion by Chael. But as those fights come less and less, like by example, I'm saying he's 3 fights is your maximum. Let's just say he's walking out for fight number 3. If it is known that that is the last fight, that is greatly going to take away from Dana thinking, hey, to hell with it, there's something special, the fans want to see it, book the venue, Bob's your uncle. It is going to take away from that. Things start to get harder to do unless you've got meaningful reason to do them. So if we're trying to get to clues, guys, if we're trying to figure out who the opponent is, Michael Chandler, to me, felt like we had some real direction there. McGregor and Chandler seemed, over a period of time, not just one night where things were hot, they seemed to kind of find each other repeatedly. It sounded as though Dana didn't hate the idea. And I bring that to you because it's kind of fun for us to guess, isn't it? But that would at least put him at 155. What are we going to do next? Where does it go from there? And that has to be both ways. If Conor goes and gets a win and he takes some shine off of a guy and he's not planning to come back or pursue a championship, right? Like those things, you got to give consideration to them. Or you juxtapose that, the guy comes over, he gets over on McGregor. What do you do with Conor next after that? Does it diminish him to a point where he no longer is Red Panty Night? Like these things just deserve a little bit of consideration. That's where the opponent comes in and starts to be very relevant. It's hard for me, though, to imagine the perfect opponent, just everything that you want, being a lot bigger than closing your eyes and throwing a dart at a name on a board full of names. I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like Conor's just going to hit. I mean, where do you want to go? Masvidal versus McGregor at one point would have been the biggest fight that our industry had ever produced. And it's not that now. So psychologically, I think it's going to be tough for the decision makers to make it. Now they're going to look at it and go, hey, that's great. Masvidal versus McGregor, that really works. There's something here, but they're going to look at it. I mean, right? It's just a human emotion. You're going to go, well, I could have done that 3 years ago when it was way bigger and I didn't do it then. Why would I do it now? I mean, there's just something about that. Nate Diaz has got to still be in conversations. Nate Diaz being a free agent has been misheard by many of you, and I would even say most of you, as it won't be the UFC next. There is nothing stopping Nate from coming back to the UFC and doing the match with Conor. And then you're hearing these different rumors about Nick, and I know that that was 185 pounds, and maybe we're just doing something there that we're not interested in, but I'm suggesting for you, it looks like, at least for the short term, that Dustin Poirier has gone in a different direction. I can't even tell you how much I respect that. And if he wants to change his mind, I won't lose respect for Poirier. But Poirier, who's in a prime position to be fighting Conor McGregor, Poirier, who looked as though, hey, look, I'll go 2 weight classes. I just want to do these big matches. And now all of a sudden he's zeroing in and even telling, it was on the Joe Rogan program, that he would like to fight with Benny DeRouche. Poirier is still hungry. Real hungry. It's the only reason you would, of stardom and power, of Dustin Poirier would go in there with Benny and put it all on the line, right? It's really interesting. It's an interesting time right now. I can't go as far as to say it doesn't matter who Conor's going to fight next. I will tell you, it will be a main event. It will be a draw. It will completely sell out. Red Panty Night is a real thing. But there was once upon a time, and this was before Conor's very first comeback, before he goes out to Fight Island and returns for what was the second fight against Dustin Poirier. A lot of people thought it was the first fight. It was actually their second fight, the first of that new rivalry. John Kavanagh came out and said, man, I'm not training him until he can tell me why we're doing this. There has to be a purpose. This sport does not happen. The motivation and the dedication and the discipline, the ingredients that you must have do not happen if you don't have a purpose. Kavanagh was very open and direct. Kavanagh never plays games. Never. You can get an interview from him, you're getting the truth from him. He said he's doing some mitt workout with Roddy, but he ain't working with me, and he won't be working with me until he tells me why we're doing this. And Conor did come to him, and he did tell him, and Coach liked it, and they moved on. But at some point, Kavanagh's going to come back and ask him that same question. Conor's hungry, and you can tell by his body that he wants to do it to a degree, but wanting to remain part of a community that your identity is tied to versus wanting to do what it takes. Conor gets put in a very unique position. Doesn't have to be a title fight. Doesn't have to be him defending one of the many titles that he's had. Every situation Conor McGregor goes to, it's going to be a 25-minute proposition. Every time. We can talk about opponent. We can talk about what's on the line. We can talk about contendership. We can all complain and cry. If it was a world title opportunity, we can do anything that we want. But we do have to accept he's going to close out the show and he's going to find himself in a 25-minute proposition. That is difficult to do for the best and most consistent of athletes. In Conor's case, he will be having to do it coming off of an injury and a delay. And to go back to what Coach Kavanagh made very public a couple of years ago, I need to know what your why is, just to make sure that you have one. I think Conor's got a lot of ingredients to this story. I know he's got haters and builds them up. Red Panty Night, that's still the draw in town. But what is his why? Coach Kavanagh demanded to know. You just put me down in the category of curious, but I would like to know.